Number 10. The Leader. The Leader terrified me when I was a kid. The design, 8-year-old me couldn't deal. So the Leader first appeared in Tales to Astonish number 62 back in 1964. He was first established as a villain for the Hulk. He was meant to be an evil parallel and counterpoint to the Hulk, also mutated by gamma radiation. He instead developed heightened intelligence, demonstrated in 60s finesse with his giant head. He turned green too. He was Samuel Stearns, just an ordinary man until he was covered in radioactive waste. One of the containers he was moving exploded. The reason he mutates as he does is because of his own subconscious and the desires that he had there. This was how gamma radiation used to work. It was a twist on something you wanted, like in Banner's case to be less meek. So Stern wanted to be as smart as his brother, which resulted in his heightened intelligence but also the personality that accompanied it, that need to prove oneself and be the smartest person in the room at all times. He would go on to create an army of humanoids to fight for him, would lead a spy ring, and much more over the years. It is said that his intellect is beyond human comprehension, and that his potential intelligence is nearly unlimited. He can master any subject and adapt to any environment no matter how foreign. So yeah, don't let the cheesy appearance fool you. I wouldn't want to go up against the Leader. Number 9. The High Evolutionary. He first appeared, a full appearance, in the Mighty Thor number 134 back in 1966, though he was mentioned the issue before. He owes his existence to Mr. Sinister, though he's really looking at the notes of Nathaniel Essex. The High Evolutionary was Herbert Edgar Wyndham, who became interested in the work of Nathaniel Essex. This was vis-a-vis evolution, and he started experimenting with genetic manipulation, but with everything, not just mutants. He was approached by an Inhuman who gave him the papers, the blueprints to crack the genetic code. This would allow him to develop a serum called Isotope A. This would also get into magic and more, which would lead to him becoming the Lord High Evolutionary and eventually just the High Evolutionary. He would become an antagonist for Thor at the start. He would create new men who would be evil and mutated, and he would become a source of new villains, and people wouldn't always know it was him. Over time, he would become more and more unstable and have his own arc, the Evolutionary War. He's always a potential threat behind the scenes with a singular focus on accelerating evolution, unchained by morals, unfettered by personal ties. There are rumors he could join the MCU, but we shall see. Number 8. Vandal Savage. We need an immortal on this list. Vandal Savage first debuted in Green Lantern number 10 back in 1943. In the year 50,000 BC, Savage was a caveman until he was bathed in radiation from a mysterious meteorite. This would alter him and make him immortal and vastly intelligent. Savage has played the long game, for centuries amassing power and prestige, yet also balancing his ego, which while it is there doesn't require him to be in the spotlight, which makes him a truly dangerous adversary. Over time he has evolved into a sophisticated man, leaving his caveman savagery behind, except on occasion. As DC has gone through its many shifts, Vandal Savage has been tied into the very nature of the multiverse itself, so he's definitely gone up in importance. He's not overused either, which is nice. Part of his intelligence comes from experience and observation, which provides you a different breed of intellect, closer to cunning, which at times can be far more deadly than any form of academic learning. Number 7. Bane. One of the things that some have lost over time when it comes to Bane is that when he first appeared, he was a dark mirror to Batman. Parents dead, raised in a prison, honing his mind, seeking an adversary. That adversary came to be Batman. By the time Bane came to Gotham, he knew everything about Bruce Wayne, released his entire rogues gallery to tire him out before coming to fight him in his own home. Bane first appeared in Batman Vengeance of Bane number 1 back in 1993. He was created for the Nightfall storyline, now famous, which would see Batman's back broken. You know the famous panel? Crack right over the nape? Bane is a genius and classy too. Ignore the luchador mask, or don't, it's pretty great. He's got brawn and brains. He's a deadly combination. Admittedly, in King's Batman book, his intelligence has gotten kind of out of control. Like, haha, I planned everything, even down to how people would react emotionally and the mistakes they would make. It's a lot of a lot. City of Bane. Still, Bane himself is cool. He's gonna factor into Year of the Villain, and he's a great planner and very patient. He deduced Batman's identity in 1 year. He also speaks multiple languages, which is just a skill I admire. The Venom doesn't affect his mind, which is impressive. Batman turns into a fiend when he's on Venom. Yes, Batman would briefly be addicted to Venom. He used it to give him a boost. Number 6. Brainiac. He was first introduced in Action Comics number 242 back in 1958. He first appeared determined to shrink down cities, specifically Metropolis at first. Double at first. He ruled a planet. Eventually he would evolve to be an important part of Krypton's history, particularly with shrinking down the city of Kandor. He has changed a lot through the various versions, but one thing that never has is his intellect. That is a constant. It is said to be 12th level intellect. This allows him heightened calculation abilities, and he has mastered pretty much all sciences. Post-crisis he stated, and I quote, "His brain can process and sort the knowledge of over 419 octodecillion beings. He is also a technopath. He can possess people and absorb their knowledge, and in the modern eras he is often driven by a quest for knowledge to consume it. He is friends with Lex and considers him an equal in intellect, which is high praise. ways. This is amongst organic beings, which Brainiac isn't really. He also spawns many generational characters, including one who would have a relationship with Supergirl. Number 5. Lex Luthor. He first debuted in Action Comics number 23 back in 1940, so he's been around since the Golden Age, but has changed a decent amount. Early Lex was much more of a mad scientist, donning that green suit and the like. He also had hair, ginger hair. Then later it was said that Clark made it fall off and a science project gone wrong where they were partnered up. It was in the 80s that the businessman Lex would begin to become more prominent, and it would take a bit for the two elements to fuse into who Lex has become today. However, from the start, he is said to be the smartest man in the DC universe. A man who wastes his time stealing cakes. Yes, that's non-canonical, but it's still funny. He has total recall and has invented many machines, and has some of the best plans going. His tragedy is he could really better the world if he wasn't so obsessed with Superman. DC, the Year of the Villain, ongoing at the time of this recording, is pretty much instigated by Lex, or Apex Lex as he is currently called. I cannot wait for that name to fade into obscurity. I can't say Apex Lex without chuckling. Lex fully knows Clark is Superman, don't at me. He's humoring him, just like everyone else on the planet. At the planet. Both. Number 4. Solomon Seltzer, the Professor. We're talking about Wanted by Mark Millar, one of his indie comics produced by Top Cow Productions. The Professor is said to have level 9 intelligence. I love that you can just assign a number to intelligence and people just go with it. Like, ooh, level 9. Level 9 of what? Tell me. He had dominion over a fifth of the Earth and was committing crimes to fund his research. He is actually responsible for provoking protagonist Wesley Gibbons into discovering his powers in the best way by just making him shoot the wings off of flies. This was adapted into a film. James McAvoy was in it. I just felt like putting someone from outside the big two on this list, and maybe we can inch more and more towards those indie lists. That's my master plan. Got the boys to have on this channel, I live in hope. Don't let your dreams be dreams. Number 3. Norman Osborn, aka the Green Goblin. He first debuted in the Amazing Spider-Man number 14, while the Green Goblin did. He is one of the most prominent Marvel villains going, but at the start he didn't have an identity to go with him. He's an iconic Spider-Man baddie who has grown to be a problem for the entire universe. So Osborn himself was already smart, a master industrialist, but when he was exposed to the chemical solution that would transform him into the Green Goblin, he would also increase his intellect. When in a more sane frame of mind, Osborn is chilling, approaching plans from a business-like perspective. He created the Dark Avengers after all. The thing is, Osborn is often insane, but he can still do some master planning, they're just more unhinged. The death of Gwen, the first time, not the retcon where he was sleeping with her beforehand. Put that in a box, then burn the box, then scatter the ashes over someplace you hate. Osborn is seen moving behind the scenes, brokering deals, creating teams, menacing Spider-Man, and sometimes falling off the deep end. But then he'll do things like accidentally erase himself from existence in the What If where he had the Infinity Gauntlet. Is he too high? Maybe, but he gains some iconic points. Also for the fact that his cunning has been shown to be increasing steadily. Number 2. Dr. Doom. Good old Doom, introduced in the Fantastic Four number 5 back in 1962. He's one of the primary antagonists for the Fantastic Four, but like Norman, he has moved far beyond that. Dr. Doom has set about mastering all he can. He is both a scientist and a sorcerer. None of that I don't believe in magic nonsense, especially not in the Marvel universe where it clearly exists. He's up there with Stephen Strange in terms of sorcery. He's also a mild technopath. He has proven himself to be able to do certain things other characters, Reed, can't. He can replicate the powers of others, has conquered the world, was a god emperor, but he is extremely arrogant, and this is often his undoing. He needs you to know he's Doom, and respect him accordingly. It can prove to be a fatal flaw. His intellect can also lead to him being bored. He needs a challenge. Side note, he's actually a good ruler and his people actually like him. So he's got that going for him. He's a benign despot. Number 1. The Maker. Did you guess he would make, pun fully intended, my number 1 spot? This is an evil version of Reed Richards, initially from the Ultimate Verse, where like most characters he was already a jerk. So he first appeared as the Maker in Ultimate Fallout number 4 in 2011. He was trapped in the negative zone and his intellect vastly increased there to the point where he became deformed, his head stretching. Unlike Reed, the Maker has no ties, nothing to keep him from exercising his intellect in that cold, clinical, curious way that quite often leaves people by the wayside. Reed is constantly fighting against this, or he was until he became Nice Guy Reed. The Maker was a dark mirror of him. And while in Evil Reed, we've seen that happen in alternate realities, not just this one. Or also What Ifs. So smart, so evil.
Number 10. Ultron. When Hank Pym was experimenting with robotics, he developed Ultron, a highly intelligent and sentient robot. The robot brainwashed Pym into forgetting that he had created him and went on his merry way, brainwashing various scientists into helping him create new robot bodies for himself in his constant quest to improve himself. He also created the hero Vision, who he created in an attempt to kill the Avengers, but for some reason he imprinted Vision's neural network with the brain patterns of the hero Wonder Wonder Man and then was surprised when Vision turned on him and joined the heroes. Ultron is clearly highly intelligent, but a lot of his plans involve brainwashing scientists into doing his bidding, so one could argue that a lot of his intelligence is just good delegation. Number 9. Kang the Conqueror. Nathaniel Richards is a man from the 30th century who may or may not be a descendant of Reed Richards' time-traveling father. Alternatively, he may also be a descendant of Doctor Doom. So either way, he's got them genius genes. He used his superior intellect to rebuild Doctor Doom's time machine and went back to ancient Egypt, where he set himself up as a pharaoh until he was dethroned by the Fantastic Four. He ended up in the 40th century, where he reinvented himself as Kang the Conqueror and came back to the 20th century with future technology that he hoped would allow him to take over the Earth and defeat his archenemies, the Avengers. He has extensive knowledge of the future and has a specialty in physics as well as being an expert engineer and technician. Number 8. Dr. Octopus. Otto Octavius graduated from MIT with a specialty in radiation, leading him to be recruited by the US Atomic Research Center. Due to the hazardous materials he would have to be handling, Otto developed 4 mechanical arms, but a workplace accident involving unstable chemicals left him insane but capable of controlling the arms with his mind. Otto became one of Spider-Man's most consistent foes, using his genius to create nefarious inventions to make the webhead's life more difficult. Perhaps his most impressive invention was the brain-swapping Octobot that allowed Dr. Octopus to trade bodies with Peter Parker, making himself the new superior Spider-Man for a time. Number 7. Mr. Sinister. Nathaniel Essex was a 19th century professor who became obsessed with the theory of evolution presented by Charles Darwin. He managed to predict the rise of mutants and began to perform brilliant but cruel experiments on people in order to try and prove his theory. This caught the attention of the mutant Apocalypse, who transformed him into Mr. Sinister, granting him mutant powers. Sinister used his extraordinary mind to continuously improve himself by taking and incorporating the DNA of other mutants. He has mastered the art of cloning, and his work over the centuries has made him an expert in mutant DNA, something that has allowed him to become more powerful over the years. His genius has also helped him to manipulate the lives of Professor X, Gambit, Havoc, Cyclops, and Jean Grey. Number 6. MODOK. There is some variation of the origins of MODOK, but the common thread is that George Tarleton was a low-level employee of Advanced Idea Mechanics, who was chosen to be the subject of an experiment with the aim of creating a way to effectively study the cosmic cube. They altered George, hoping to improve his intelligence, but the resulting experiment also caused his head to grow to a massive size, forcing him to be seated in a hover chair called the Doomsday Chair, as he could no longer support his head's weight. He became known as MODOK, with a C, mental organism designed only for computing. His increased intelligence also led to an increase in his ego and ambition, and he soon overthrew his superiors and took over AIM, swapping out the C in his name for a K, becoming MODOK, mental organism designed only for killing. MODOK uses his advanced intelligence and his psychic powers to take on the various heroes of the Marvel Universe. This resulted in him neglecting the scientific aspects of AIM, trying to get revenge on the heroes he's fought, which led to him being ousted by AIM. So though he is intelligent, he is less capable of using his massive brain to be an effective leader than many of the other villains on this list. Number 5. Thanos. Thanos was born on the planet Titan and had the deviant gene, which gave him thick purple skin as well as superior strength and heightened powers. He fell in love with a woman who turned out to be Death, and dedicated his life to impressing her by destroying as many living things as possible. Using his big smart brain, he came up with a plan to acquire the Infinity Gems and wipe out half of all life in the universe in order to impress his love. Unlike many other evildoers who claim to be geniuses and then fail, Thanos actually pulled this off, getting all of the gems and using the Infinity Gauntlet to enact his deadly romantic gesture. Number 4. The Leader. Samuel Stearns was a man of below average intelligence who was working at a chemical plant when one of the canisters of waste he was moving broke open and doused him in toxic waste. On the plus side, rather than giving him cancer, it gave him super intelligence. On the flip side, it also caused his head to grow to a massive size and for his skin to turn green. Stearns decided to dedicate himself to taking over the world and started calling himself the Leader. Stearns has used his intelligence to create brilliant machines and nefarious plots that he has used to try and take out his archenemy, the Hulk. His intelligence has varied over the years, with the effects of the toxic waste wearing off and forcing Stearns to develop more schemes to maintain his superior intelligence. Number 3. The High Evolutionary. Herbert Windham was a geneticist who, inspired by Mr. Sinister's early work, developed a genetic accelerator which let him evolve creatures to their next evolutionary steps. In a move that doesn't really track, the scientific community cast him out, saying that he had no right to tamper with the natural process of evolution. He was given the secret of how to unlock genetic codes by a disguised Inhuman, and he continued his experiments, managing to evolve his pet Dalmatian, but it was mistaken for a beast and shot by locals. This caused Herbert to seek out a place where he could continue his work in private. He used his vast personal fortune to create a secret base in Wundagore Mountain. He created his human-animal hybrids, the New Men, and taught them a code of chivalry in order to aid his quest to further human evolution. He also evolved himself in order to grant himself more intelligence and renamed himself the High Evolutionary. He is so intelligent that he managed to create a device that stole the Silver Surfer's cosmic powers. In a shocking turn of events, he kidnapped Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver and revealed to them that they were not mutants, but were actually superpowered as a result of experiments he had secretly run on them when they were children. Number 2. Dr. Doom. Victor Von Doom was the child of Romani people living in Latveria. His mother was a sorceress, and after her and his father's passing, Victor began to study her books, teaching himself the dark arts. He also developed a keen scientific mind, which made him a legendary scientist and inventor at a very young age, and led to him being tracked down by the US military and offered further education in the States. It was here that he met Reed Richards, with whom he developed a lifelong rivalry. While in school, he developed his infamous Doom bots and also built a functional time machine. He was disfigured in an accident that resulted in his expulsion, and he went on to become the leader of some monks who helped him build his iconic armor. He became the main antagonist of the Fantastic Four and the dictator of the country of Latveria, causing lots of problems for the heroes of the Marvel Universe. Number 1. The Maker. Reed Richards is often called the smartest man alive in the Marvel Universe, and alongside the Fantastic Four is one of Earth's greatest heroes. His ego has often led to him making some questionable decisions, but he has been instrumental in saving Earth from several threats, including Galactus and the Skrull. Despite his heroics, we did witness a spectacular fall from grace for Reed in the Ultimate Comics universe, otherwise known as Earth 1610. The combined stress of the Fantastic Four breaking up and Sue Storm rejecting his marriage proposal caused Reed to snap and blow up his childhood home to fake his death, killing his family in the process. He went on to use aliens under his control to attack the heroes. He was eventually defeated and disfigured by the Human Torch and flung into the negative zone. Reed returned to Earth and took on the identity of the Maker and set out on a twisted quest to make the world perfect. He killed all the Asgardians in an attempt to understand Thor's power and used an antimatter attack to attack Washington, D.C., killing POTUS, his cabinet, and all of Congress. The Maker went on to do a lot of twisted stuff, fighting the heroes of his own Earth as well as the heroes of Earth 616, showing just how dangerous Reed Richards can be when his massive brain is turned against the heroes of the Marvel Universe.
And at number 10, Riddler. Believe it or not, Batman has actually admitted that the Riddler is more intelligent than he is. Obviously, he is incredibly insane, but the Riddler has even realized this himself, which only expanded his intelligence. In terms of street-level villains, few can stand up to the intelligence of Riddler. Just like Batman himself, Riddler always has backup plans for his backup plans. He plays for most outcomes, but he usually sets traps and plans that are so well thought out that he doesn't always need his backup plans. And then, obviously, there's all the wordplay that he includes in his riddles that has even the most astute of readers rubbing their chins just trying to figure it out, you know? Number 9. Vandal Savage. When you think of intelligence, you don't often think of cavemen, but there is one caveman who can proudly make this list. Vandal Savage was alive 50,000 years ago as chief of a tribe of other cavemen, but when he came into contact with a strange meteorite, it exploded and bathed him in this strange alien radiation that gave him immunity to age aging, disease, and fatigue, meaning he's effectively immortal. The meteorite also increased his intelligence to superhuman levels, which combined with 50,000 years of learning, experiencing, and living alongside every single technological innovation in the history of man, Vandal Savage possesses skills in almost all areas, even basically becoming immune to pain. But he specifically focuses on the tactical skills that would help him become a world conqueror. He never became. Number 8. Eobard Thawne. Eobard Thawne was a brilliant scientist born in the 25th century and genetically altered to already be smarter than most with an IQ of 167, which automatically gives him a technological understanding that exceeds almost everyone from the modern era. But he was able to create his own negative speed force that has the ability to shut off other speedsters' connection to the regular speed force. His negative speed force also gave him the ability to digest information at an incredibly fast rate, and that, coupled with his already high intelligence, makes him extremely capable with his mind, even being able to figure out insane ways of manipulating time to his advantage. Now, he isn't the greatest fighter, but with his speed and his mind, he doesn't need to be. Number 7. Dr. Sivana. Sivana is a scientific genius, mastering almost all of the scientific disciplines that exist on Earth, making him one of the leading minds on Earth. He is one of the cookie cutters that people think of when talking about mad scientists. He is also the arch enemy of Shazam and the Captain Marvel family, and because of this, and his genius, he has elevated himself beyond just being a scientific genius, studying the occult, and being able to teach himself how to harness magic, specifically after he joined forces with Mr. Mind and when he reawakened Black Adam, which is when his right eye became capable of seeing magical energies. Number 6. Professor Ivo. Professor Ivo is a genius, specifically specializing in cybernetics. He has built Amazo, Amazoid, Composite Superman, and Kid Amazo, and he was also the partner of T.O. Morrow in building Red Volcano. He also built the body of Tomorrow Woman, but he was also able to figure out how to give himself immortality even if the formula that granted him this ability was flawed and left him pretty rough looking. Number 5. Batman Who Laughs. Look, I'm sorry that this guy makes almost every single DC villain related list, but it's not my fault. DC took a version of Batman, a level 9 intelligence with an IQ of 192 and an unbelievable amount of skill, and turned him into a villain, and that almost automatically puts the Batman Who Laughs in the top tier of threats. But then, they also Jokerized him, and it made the character capable of almost destroying the entire multiverse with the powers of Dr. Manhattan. Just like Lex Luthor, Bruce Wayne is just a normal guy, so to elevate himself to the level of a multiversal god who defeats almost any threat posed against him, the intelligence, cunning, and skill he would have to possess this is just beyond anything else we have ever seen. Just like Batman, the Batman Who Laughs is a planner who lets almost nothing get in his way. I wouldn't be surprised if he finds a way to return to the DC universe very soon. Number 4. Darkseid. The most intelligent of the new gods with the exception of Metron, Uxas is the genius ruler of Apocalypse who has developed advanced technologies, conquered countless worlds, gained the anti-life equation, and developed the Soulfire formula for defeating the Source. He is one of the ultimate enemies of the universe, and while that is largely due to the amount of sheer power he has, it's backed up by an incredible level of otherworldly intelligence and an insane amount of experience. He's a master tactician that is able to pretty much outthink almost all of the universe's superheroes, and his presence is always a massive cause for concern that always requires a group effort to overcome. Number 3. Ozymandias. The Watchmen comics, which are integrated with DC but always feel slightly separate, have this knack for being rather realistic in terms of comic books, which is why their version of the smartest man on Earth is actually quite terrifying. Ozymandias is wildly intelligent, but because of Watchmen's realism, he doesn't often make the same stupid, ego-fueled mistakes that other villains, like Lex Luthor, do. Also, more often than not, the heroes kind of find themselves a little conflicted when facing him. That's because he is genuinely trying to help everyone except for the millions or billions of people who would perish for his goals to become reality. Ozymandias is also possibly responsible for pulling strings throughout the multiverse in order to enact his own wills. I feel like since he's more involved with the Watchmen, he kinda gets overlooked, but he is almost always given the title of smartest man on Earth, and it's not for no reason. Number 2. Lex Luthor. Luthor achieved his place as Earth's greatest criminal in the mainstream DC universe thanks to his super intellect intellect, eidetic memory, and gift for strategy. He's also one of the only villains who has repeatedly rallied together the other supervillains, which someone on the internet described as trying to herd a group of cats, and Lex was able to do it. There isn't a facet of science Luthor hasn't mastered to extend his goals or enhance his business empire, including space, time, and extra-dimensional travel, biochemistry, robotics, and synthetics. Luthor isn't just considered the most intelligent human, but one of the most brilliant beings in the multiverse. I find Lex and Oz to be fairly equal, but obviously Lex has many more examples that show off his vast intelligence, and that just puts him a cut above at number 2. But at number 1, it's Brainiac. There is no being in the universe that can stand up to the intellectual power of Brainiac, and with that name, it would just be silly if anyone could. Using his biological supercomputer of a brain, Brainiac rules over planets that he has conquered and manipulates events from the shadows. He even has other separate versions of himself that could each take up a point on this list. His brain is so powerful that he often doesn't have to engage in actual combat at all. His obsession with learning and studying everything has led him across the cosmos, destroying anything that gets in his way, leading him to possess the combined knowledge of many thousands of worlds that he has assimilated and contained. He is, on paper, the smartest DC villain out there. Unfortunately for him, in practice, he's outsmarted by some relatively simple things, like, for example, the fact that germs exist. But despite that, there's absolutely no doubt that this 12th level intellectual being lives up to the name of Brainiac as one of the smartest villains in DC Comics.
In the number 10 spot, we kick off with the Joker. One of Batman's main rivals, the Joker is one of the most influential and well-studied villains in comic book history, and for good reason. Although he is depicted as a madman, Heath Ledger's portrayal kept his analytic mind intact. This brought the Joker to the next level, turning him into a terrifying villain that was always several steps ahead of the entirety of Gotham's police department. Most villains' brains seem to stop working once they get a hold of the money and the fame they seek, but the Joker continues to plot and plan for the simple reason of wanting to watch the world burn. Coming in at number 9, we have James Moriarty. Known for being Sherlock's arch nemesis, Professor James Moriarty is often regarded as just as smart, if not even smarter than the detective himself. To begin, he is a math professor, which takes not only brains, but dedication and discipline as well. Two further aspects that create a dangerous villain, combined with a total lack of conscience and his love for mind games. Surprisingly, the man can throw a pretty nice punch as well.
His rage. Incoming assault.
Next up at number 8 is Catherine Trammell. Catherine was the author of best-selling crime novels in Basic Instinct, and it was in these novels that she hid her genius. They always say the best way to get away with a crime is to hide it in plain sight, which is exactly what this leading lady villain did. Because no one would be stupid enough to write about the exact kinds of crimes they were committing, right? On the contrary, maybe only the smartest people did exactly that. She may be a murderer, but at least she's not a liar. In the number 7 spot, we have Emperor Palpatine. We didn't think Star Wars could get a villain any better than Vader, but then Darth Sidious came along. Sometimes when you're overtly evil, you don't get very far, nobody wants to follow you, but Palpatine thought about this right off the bat. Instead, he used his position of Senator of Naboo to manipulate and construct the Galactic Empire that was intended to wipe out the Jedis. When he was finally defeated, he left such an impact on the Empire that they continued to follow his orders even when he was no longer around. Coming in at number 6 is John Kramer. We'll just pretend that the Saw franchise ended at the 4th movie because it was all kind of downhill from there. John Kramer, otherwise known as Jigsaw, was depicted as a disturbed but intelligent man whose death traps were as intricate as they were horrifying. Even after his death, his legacy lives on because he was smart enough to plan far ahead so that he could continue playing his games and seeing just exactly how much his victims valued their lives. Next up at number 5, we have Khan. Khan was the most prominent product of a selective breeding and genetic modification program. He was specifically produced with superhuman strength and intense analytic ability, so it's no surprise that he was regarded as one of Captain Kirk's most dangerous enemies. The character of Khan is actually an interesting and before its time commentary on the concept of genetic engineering, one that scientists today are playing around with. Designer babies that could kill us in a few minutes, anyone? Up next at number 4 is Lex Luthor. Luthor. Not only is Lex Luthor incredibly rich, but he is also explicitly stated as one of the most intelligent people on Earth, putting his brains to use as an inventor and scientist. And of course on overthrowing Superman. Without his war suit, Lex Luthor is a normal man fighting against a superhero, so obviously he has to resort to his brain power and a few tricks up his sleeve in order to even be a match for his alien adversary. In the number 3 spot we have Hans Landa. Also known as the Jew Hunter from Inglourious Basterds, Landa is incredibly full of himself, but also incredibly ambitious, and he has the brains to keep up with his determination. He is a sociopath that knows how to get what he wants, whether it's through his sadistic tendencies or through his manipulative charms. The one piece of redemption for him is potentially his love of milk, which has been analyzed previously as a sort of metaphor of leftover innocence from childhood. Or he just needs a lot of calcium to be an asshole. Coming in at number 2 is Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal is maybe one of the creepiest villains on this list, but that doesn't take away from his supreme genius. The villain was originally a psychiatrist, so he has a particular insight into the human mind and how it works, and he uses this to his advantage to achieve his goals. What's his goal? To keep his belly stuffed with human entrails. But on the other hand, we have his prison guards in Silence of the Lambs. I'm sorry, I didn't realize giving Hannibal his food tray meant you had to go inside his cell. Seems like a pretty bad idea. And finally, in the number 1 spot we have HAL 9000. This is one that may seem like cheating because HAL is artificial intelligence and not flesh and bone, but the heuristically programmed algorithmic computer, that is a mouthful, is easily one of the smartest villains of all time. You really cannot outsmart a supercomputer, even if you were all 9 of the other villains combined. His downfall in the Space Odyssey series has nothing to do with any calculation flaw he made, but rather the fact that he lacked arms, and legs, and an entire body.